This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is a historic episode. When I say historic, I mean news broke on Friday that rocked the wrestling world. On today's show, we're going to get into that. Of course, we're going to take a look at AEW, what's been going on there. We've got a ton of news and notes. I think this whole entire episode is going to be basically based around news. But the real reason why Liv Morgan became the WWE Women's SmackDown champion, some beef going on between one of AEW's biggest stars and New Japan's biggest star, as well as the return of Kenny Omega. We might have a little inkling on when that's going to take place. We're going to get into all of that in the news and notes segment. But on Friday, my world, the Doc's world, your world, the wrestling world, everybody was rocked when Vince McMahon announced his retirement. To get into that with me is the one, the only. He is the Doc John Macaroon. Before we set that topic up, Doc, how you doing? How you feeling? Are you still reeling from what took place on Friday afternoon?
No, Vince, no, he's gone. He stepped down. I wonder why. I wonder if he felt like the need to devote his more time to the family, all the years he spent away. I'm trying to figure out, why would Vince McMahon at this time of his life kind of pass things along to his daughter? I wonder why. I wonder if it's because of maybe a scandal. Maybe he felt like, shit, I'm 77. I hope that it's nothing serious with his health, because the man is indeed well over the age of 70. But yeah, it happened to be where it was a lull in the day on Friday. And like I'm prone to do, just scrolling Twitter, and there it is. And it was just succinct, right to the point. Vince McMahon, at 77, it's time for me to retire. Then, now, forever together. I was shocked. I was like, oh, there it is. And I guess I'm not terribly surprised at all. But it kind of, in those kind of moments, really hits you to the point where I remember when Vince was an announcer. I remember when he was the guy calling the matches with Bobby Heenan. The way in which he was actually a very good announcer. And so, look, you have to tell the whole story. He's retiring amid scandal, but at the very least, the world of professional wrestling that we get to watch and enjoy was created in large part by Vince McMahon, but as well by the performers. So you look at the visionary work that he did. We don't discount the work that he did to take something that was mostly territorial and brought it mainstream. So he gets credit for the work that he did, but unfortunately, there's another whole other side to it. And of course, we've talked about it. We've belabored it. We won't do a whole heck of a lot more of that. But at the same time, it just stinks, because had that not happened, the negatives, I think you could have really had a reflective look at a billionaire who had a visionary look at a different way of presenting professional wrestling that contributed to what we see now with AEW, Ring of Honor. In the annals of time, Vince McMahon will get credit, I think, with being the guy that took wrestling from point A to point B. And that's all you can do as a visionary in someone's, in the realm of the work that you did. He dedicated his life to something, and Vince McMahon is not in charge anymore. But for me, cuz, I'm not going to lie, outside of the niceties and the respect that you give the man, my second reaction was, fuck yes, finally. I want to see Triple H as EVP of the company. I want to see different. I want to see something that does not look like something that Vince had his imprint on. Whether you thought it was good, bad, quality, creative, business-minded ways of making money, it's just time. Nobody can have their hand on a creative outlet for 30 years and not get stale. Let's go. Triple H, Stephanie, Nick Khan, do your thing. Make this product better and take it higher than your dad did. You got huge shoes to fill, but I am excited to see something different. Vince is out. Stay out. Sayonara, motherfucker. Thank you for your time. Let's move on to the people that are doing this shit right. And that's what I'm excited about. It's set an excitement in me. I'm like, okay, something new. It has to happen.
Yeah, I think that was everybody's initial reaction too, right? It was one of, shock and disbelief, because I was telling you before the show, I thought this man was going to die in Gorilla. I thought his last breath would be sitting at the desk. Somebody would come back in and they would say, Vince, what did you think about it? Vince would have his hand on his head and he'd be unresponsive and he would just fall over at Gorilla. I never thought we would see the day Vince McMahon retires. But I was absolutely stunned when this happened. Like you said, it was like 3:30, 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon when this news broke. It was like hours before Friday Night SmackDown. It was a total lull where you weren't expecting anything to happen, and he announces retirement via Twitter. And then there's a statement released by WWE. But shocked and awed with the initial response, and then you're right. Okay, cool. Where do we go now? How do we move forward? Because I think we all agree the product with WWE has grown stale. The product with WWE has become extremely predictable, has been quite boring, and it doesn't really hold your attention. And I think as wrestling fans, we do enjoy a lot of the flippy stuff. We do enjoy a lot of the big moves. We do enjoy a little bit of the no-selling when things are going on. The veil on the wrestling world has been lifted, so the product has changed a little bit. That being said, we still love storytelling. We still love the psychology. We love when you can give us this nice mix of everything that we grew up with, as well as update it a little bit. Give it a little bit of a new swerve. Give it a little bit of a new angle. And with WWE, it really feels like it has dug its feet into some 1990s type of wrestling, which was great when we were kids, but it just doesn't necessarily work anymore. And it just sometimes comes across as very flat. And Vince being head of creative and it being Vince's vision, I think has really helped set this company back. And I think that's why it has lost in ratings wars against the likes of AEW. Now, Vince stepping aside, and now you've got Stephanie McMahon and you've got Nick Khan as the co-CEOs. You've got Triple H stepping in as the executive vice president, as well as head of talent relations. I think all of this really, from the top down, helps restructure this company. I think it helps for the creative process. I think it helps with kind of the atmosphere in the back. It's going to be really interesting to see. I don't think it's going to be immediate, but I think what is going to happen is you're going to see a slight change. You're going to see initially a subtle change in what we're given. And I think, and my hope is what ends up happening is we get a little bit more of the NXT black and gold brand to kind of filter through Raw and SmackDown. We don't need any more of this weird gimmicky stuff. We just go back to being what good pro wrestling was. But to double down on a point that you had made, Vince McMahon took something that was very, very segmented, and this is yours, this is mine. We'll maybe cross over sometimes, but don't mess with my stuff, I'm not messing with your stuff. Vince McMahon had a bigger vision, took it all over, produced the very first ever WrestleMania, gave us our first large televised wrestling events that go worldwide. And Vince did it better than anybody. Vince did an absolutely fantastic job revolutionizing wrestling. What you know as wrestling today is all because of Vince McMahon. And Vince McMahon lived it's almost like a double-edged sword in his life, because he was a shithead. He seemed like he was an awful person. The allegations that are coming out are absolutely terrible. But at the same point, this man gave you some of the best creative and did some of the best things for the wrestling world that you've ever seen. And he's been embroiled in scandals since it seems like day one. The man loves to fight and loves a good fight. So it is shocking to see Vince McMahon go at 77 years old to retire and step away. But it makes me feel good that there is a line of succession set up, that Stephanie McMahon is at the head. I don't really care about Nick Khan. I don't know anything about Nick Khan. Nick Khan seems like he's the slasher man. When they need to cut people, he's the guy. And I'm happy that Triple H is brought back, and he has a position of power within the company. I absolutely love that. What do you think this changing of the guard, switch to Stephanie and Nick as CEO or co-CEOs, Triple H being the EVP and head of talent relations, what do you think some of the ripple effects are that we could see with this new front office, with this new structure? How do you think this changes WWE going forward?
One thing has to be at the forefront. Not only create superstars, but create megastars. Nobody since the Stone Cold Steve Austin era, Rock, Undertaker, Triple H, has gotten to that level. They've plateaued people with a series of booking moves that kind of limits the potential of some of these wrestlers. For example, you know how many losses Seth Rollins has suffered on television this year? Way more than should ever happen to a man of that caliber. So I'm thinking that the first step has to be, okay, we've got Roman Reigns. Now we got that one guy. He's elevating to that point. We've got Brock Lesnar. He's to that point. We need 2 to 3 more, whether it be now Cody Rhodes, AJ Styles, and Seth Rollins. We need to pump up everybody a good 15% across the board. You can't have The Miz continuing to do this corny ass shit with these celebrity people when that's a world caliber talent that could be in there with a WrestleMania feud with AJ Styles. Instead, they do it on Monday Night Raw as a transition to Logan Paul. Get the hell out of here. They gotta let people grow internationally, grow to the heights of Hulk Hogan status. You got a couple, but you gotta kind of give that across the board. Yes, you're gonna have to pay more money to these talent. Yes, their egos are gonna inflate. But I've spent the last couple of days just watching Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, the likes of those with the biggest egos in WWE, Triple H, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, Randy Orton. It just kind of seems that there's a certain point these guys get to, and then they're just in the mix, in the flow. That you have to differentiate these people. And it might mean, because I know Raw is interesting, it might mean just a couple more squash matches. It might mean more vignettes. It might mean instead of Seth Rollins wrestling 48 times, he wrestles 36 times on Raw and can do the things that he does and is more special. You can't have just a roster full of people. And I think the biggest thing for me is you gotta stop wasting talent. You got the likes of Nikki ASH in a horrible gimmick. You gotta kind of restock some of the gimmicks that you go, okay, this is corny ass Vince shit. Let's get into the modern era. And cause I think they're doing it. And I think the guy that's at the head of it, and I know it sounds weird because of where he came from, but Pat McAfee, to me, represents the new era of WWE. A guy that might not be the wrestler type, but somebody that if you train and work hard and has the desire, you could throw him out there a dozen times a year, and he just goes out there and goes, holy shit, I just want to listen to that guy. I just want to hear his entrance, and I want to see what he does because of how easy he does it. Now, he's fighting against Baron Corbin, who nobody gives a shit about. But, bottom line, Pat McAfee's going to make bum-ass Corbin. And that's what maybe Logan Paul can do. That's what maybe this new shift is going to represent, this TV 14 era. I think that, to nobody's surprise, changing up the flow a little bit from this kitty cutter company for kids to this more hard edge language and a little bit of an edge of an MMA type thing instead of a kid type thing, then I think this is where it's going. And so I saw progress this week. Whatever it was, I saw myself enjoying SmackDown just a little bit more, and I saw myself enjoying wrestling a little bit more these last couple of weeks. And it has to do with just a little bit more creativity and maybe a change away from, hey, let's do this, move away from the formulaic nonsense that became something where you could say, oh, we know what's going to happen. Promo. Oh, match. Oh, now inclusion into a 6-man. No more contract signings that last forever and don't keep it moving. So I'm very, very happy with how the potential looks. And we'll be here at the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast to break it all down. What do you want to see? What would it be, the elevation of women as well? What do you want to see that would get you more intrigued and say, okay, let's get the ratings into the 3s at least in this new era?
So I think what you could do initially, which would be super simple, just give us more wrestling. We tune into a wrestling program for wrestling. Give us more wrestling. We don't need all the package recaps. We don't need all the promos. We don't need all the weird stuff backstage. Give us some wrestling. There are days where SmackDown will have a grand total of 15 to 20 minutes of total wrestling. Like, do you realize that's a 2-hour show? That is an hour, or that is 120 minutes. And out of the 120 minutes, you might get what is it, a fifth of it might be wrestling if you're lucky. Maybe a sixth of it is wrestling. Give us more wrestling. Now, that being said, the wrestling has to be good. We don't want to see people going out there and botching spots. I mean, you are notorious for going online and finding the botches and sending me the botches in a text message. It is absolutely great. So we don't need botches.
Oh.
We don't need bad wrestling, but give us good wrestling. More wrestling, I think, makes things much better. Tell good stories. Again, like you said too, you have Nikki ASH, who's a very good wrestler. She's a very good wrestler. She is in this stupid ass gimmick. She's been bounced around. Like, you have no idea what direction her character is going. Like, what is she absolutely doing here? Nobody really knows. Give the character some direction. Even if it's one of those things where they're just kind of in a holding pattern, at least have them going out there doing something to help elevate that character for the future. You don't have to have them out there just kind of floundering and just being used as fodder. If you're not going to use them the proper way, don't use them. You know, because all we know is what you're giving us on television, you know? So I think changing the narrative for these characters to make them more interesting, make it a little bit more real too. We don't need this. There are times where WWE does this stuff where it is so over the top. And like, look, we all bought into The Undertaker, right? The Undertaker was supposed to be a dead guy who was basically resumed and worked as an Undertaker and would take people to their death, take them to hell. Like, we all bought into it, right? So there are things that we can suspend disbelief for. But for the most part, make wrestling a little bit more realistic. Make it a little bit more real life. You don't need to have all the crazy gimmicks all the time. You don't need all of that. You know, just, again, we tell stories all the time on this show, right? With wrestling. You have a good guy, you have a bad guy. Bad guy wants something the good guy has. Good guy says no. Bad guy jumps the good guy. Oh, guess what? Now we're fighting because you hit me. Oh, okay, cool. Story. There you go. Let's roll.
Story. Let's roll.
Like, that's all you necessarily need. That is how simple wrestling can be. You sometimes make things way too complicated. So I think just clean up the stories and give the characters a little bit more to work with. And don't be so. I think one thing we love about AEW is when they cut promos, a lot of it is off the top of their head. Give them bullet points. Don't script them. You can see them stopping and thinking on what their next line is when they're working in WWE. You don't have to do that. They're professionals. And if they're not good enough to cut a promo, they probably shouldn't be in your company. Those are people you can let go. Let them go someplace else. You know? I think that would be a good way to help revitalize some WWE. And I think you're right. Pat McAfee, I think, is now the face of whatever this new era is going to be called. And I think I love that.
Yeah, I think less writers for sure, because what you notice is with WWE is you don't need 9 producers to go in there because it just messes up the creative process. You need just a couple guys, and I think this is where the return of Triple H really should not be understated. This is somebody who knows the wrestling business, has seen the heights of the business with Ric Flair, with the WCW. This is somebody that has seen the ins and outs. And I think he's gained the knowledge of all the good things in wrestling and all the bad things. Remember, too, he faced punishment from the WWE because of the fact that he did the whole goodbye to wrestlers and breaking kayfabe. He saw the wrath of Vince McMahon. So Triple H
led to the creation of Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Exactly. In terms of understanding the business, there's no now better mind in the world of wrestling than Triple H. And look what he's done. He has Shawn Michaels working at NXT. He has the ability to bring back people, you know, to connect Eric Bischoff with Vince McMahon, to kind of be that person that understands talent, but also now in the last 5 years has transitioned to become a business person worldwide to market the WWE. I think it's going to be great. I think the more reality-based opportunities are going to be great. And wasn't that great on SmackDown? I think the whole Brock Lesnar swerve, I thought when I first heard that Brock Lesnar wasn't there, I made it a joke. I'm like, wait a minute. Either he got money cut or he was just told that he was going to win the SummerSlam match, and now he got told that he's going to lose and he's upset. But part of me said, wait a minute. Once the show started, Beforehand, I bought into the news. But once Austin Theory came out early in the show and brought up his name, I knew something was weird, that it could be storyline related. But the thing that had me laughing was some site that has 90,000 followers put out a report that said that Goldberg was being considered to replace him. Now, to be honest, that was funny, because could you imagine a SummerSlam that's not already that's been unheralded already? Could you imagine a switch from Brock Lesnar to Goldberg? I thought that was the funniest wrestling report I think I've seen this year. I literally laughed and said, that is not happening. I laughed so hard at the idea of, I think they would drag Cody Rhodes' dead carcass out there to the ring with an injury and have him get squashed by Roman Reigns before Goldberg, 50-year-old man, would headline WrestleMania in a no-holds-barred match. So to see it, it was great that they did it. However, they worked if the media is now, if the WWE, sources are going to the media and just telling them shit and then having those guys do some of the work for them, that's kind of funny as hell. If WWE is using their ability to talk to reporters in a way to work the fans, I think that's great, because there's some guys that really, they are dialed in. Like they can pump out show sheets. They know what's going on. So the reporters are in on it, and the reporters are getting worked, and they don't care because they're getting access. And it was great to see, because once his music hit, I was like, oh, it's Brock Lesnar. And he destroyed Austin Theory, which again furthers that storyline. So I thought it was great. And if they blur the line between reality and what's supposed to be a storyline, then that just makes the show that much more interesting. But if you just put the puzzle together, Brock Lesnar is on a per appearance deal that's massive. Yeah. He is not leaving because Vince McMahon retired. He's not going to go away crying.
There's too much money.
There's too much money, and there's too much going on with it. So he would never leave like that prior to a show. He'll just do the job and leave like he always does. So I'm excited for that. What are you looking forward to? What would be a staple of Triple H for you, knowing that what he can accomplish and his potential now coming back after a health scare?
What could be a staple?
Yeah, what should Triple H's goals be? What should he do?
I really do. I think it's taking over. It's helping to refine the creative process with WWE. Yep. It's helping to deliver better stories. I don't feel like the storytelling in WWE is very concise. I don't feel like a lot of times you'll build to something for weeks on weeks on weeks, and then they just forget about it, and you just go away from it. And then there's never any follow-up. Yes. I don't necessarily mind if you build to something for a couple of months and then something else happens, as long as you come back and you wrap that story up. You can always come back and be like, oh, well, this is what happened 3 weeks ago. And because of this is now why we're back here. There are ways to tell stories that make things interesting. I feel like with WWE, a lot of times the storytelling is very, very uninteresting. Got it. I think with Triple H, he's got such a great mind for wrestling. He can help refine that creative process. I think something that'll be interesting, and I want to get your take on this. I think something that'll be interesting is Vince obviously had his handpicked guys. Yes, obviously, Austin Theory, handpicked guy. Brock Lesnar, that is one of his dudes. That's why when that news broke that Brock Lesnar walked out, I don't think a lot of people were really, I don't want to say surprised or shocked. Like everybody was I guess it kind of makes sense because those guys were buddies. Anytime Vince needed something, Brock was there. As much as we make fun of Goldberg has immense respect for Vince McMahon, and Vince McMahon and him have a relationship where Vince could call him Goldberg's been dealing with a torn up shoulder for years, but he constantly keeps putting surgery off because Vince might need him. And Vince understands this. So how does Vince leaving affect and impact some of his hand-picked guys? Does Austin Theory still have that rocket pack attached to his back? Does Brock Lesnar continue to get used in these big moments? And there was a toy released by Mattel at the San Diego Comic-Con that shows Brock Lesnar holding the 2 championship belts. So is Brock Lesnar still going to win at SummerSlam? Is now that going to become a loss? Like how does the vision of what Vince McMahon had for these specific people, how does it now change? How do you think it changes, and who do you think is the most impacted by it?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see. That's a great question, because of the fact that there were certain scenarios in which we would disagree with who the handpicked people are, because Brock Lesnar has been in the main event for so long, but he has been kind of like a part-timer in that he comes in for certain angles and then he's gone for a long time. I think the good thing is that Triple H was a worker. This was somebody that got in the ring. So I have to believe that the likes of Seth Rollins, AJ Styles, Mike the Miz Annan, I think that the workers might have an opportunity. Look how the show opened. Look who was the first act that came out. It was the Street Profits, who get a special different kind of entrance. So I think that the characters now coming from NXT might have an opportunity to kind of take a step forward and not be known as the call-up of doom, where whenever a talent gets over in NXT, their call-up ends in getting fired. So I just think that there has to just be an elevation across the board of the talent. And they're still good. Look, it's a business. So you're still going to have the top people, but I just think you're going to just need a couple more of them. And I think you're starting to see a little bit of who those people are. Street Profits in the tag team, Usos, and Riddle are characters I think that potentially now can have opportunities to do a lot of big things on a much bigger scale. So I'm looking for, so I ended up getting the opportunity now to kind of look at that roster and say, this is going to be a good thing to have Triple H kind of get in there and get in the mix. So I'm excited to see it. I think it's going to be great. This transition has the potential to do a lot of good things, and I think they're going to deliver. Is it going to be perfect, flawless? No. You got to remember there were some bad eras in WWE, but I think we're getting close to the Attitude Era, and I think we're getting a lot closer to an era of right there, that time where it was the Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression. And I think if you can blend those two together, tell good stories, and incorporate everything you've said as well, oh man, it's going to be a good time. I think the era is coming. I think ratings are going to go up, and it's going to really hinge on what happens at SummerSlam. And because we've yet to talk about what happens when Cody Rhodes comes back. Do they bring back some nostalgia? Because, too, I was thinking this, too, as you were talking. What was the staple of Vince McMahon when he opened WrestleMania? Welcome to WrestleMania. Now what has happened these last couple shows, a little bit of a throwback to the past. Every week they're introducing somebody in the ring just saying, hey, welcome to Raw, welcome to SmackDown. And I think it kind of has that little bit of a subliminal nostalgia feel, like, hey, this is the preeminent longtime wrestling company. And I just can't wait. The excitement's real in regards to what's going to happen with WWE, and I think it's going to be a lot of good things that we're going to talk about from here on out. It's a good era. I think 2022 and beyond, the PV era post Vince is going to be awesome. I think it's going to be great.
I like the way you titled that, the PV era. Some things that weren't really good this week in wrestling was AEW. And
man,
we normally love AEW. We do everything we can do to tune in and watch AEW, and it really felt like AEW suffered from overbooking this week. Like, the booking for certain big moments on this show totally undermined what you got in the ring and really took away from, one, the enjoyment of the show, and two, what was presented to us. Before we get into I guess the big undoing of what we've seen this week in AEW, I do want to talk about the return of Jungle Boy.
Yep.
So you have Luchasaurus and you've got Christian Cage. They have a match against the Varsity Blondes. Luchasaurus destroys both of the Varsity Blondes. And in the very end, Christian Cage jumps on top of Luchasaurus' shoulders, just like Jungle Boy used to. When Jungle Boy's music hits, Luchasaurus, Christian Cage do a fantastic job of selling surprise and shock. And you wait, and you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you're not sure if Jungle Boy's going to show up. And then all of a sudden you see him emerge from the back holding a chair. Thought that was fantastic. Thought that was done really, really well. Jungle Boy gets down towards the ring, and Luchasaurus is standing in front of him. And he's got a chair, and he's ready to go to war if this is what it means. And Luchasaurus just kind of turns to the side, allows Jungle Boy to run into the ring to chase Christian Cage out of the arena and up the stairs. Again, this is a spot, to me, where I feel like booking kind of overthought itself, and it really kind of took away from... This was a big moment. This was massive, right? Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus came into the game together. At least in AEW they did. This took away from that moment because you have Christian Cage basically playing mind games with Luchasaurus. And what I would have rather have seen, you tell me if you would like this story better or what we got. You have Christian Cage basically holding his power over Luchasaurus for maybe another week or two before Jungle Boy shows up. Or you just have Jungle Boy show up at the top and you have Luchasaurus standing on the ring basically acting as the heater for Christian Cage. You don't need to have Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus have any interaction at this moment. That can come in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, you can have Jungle Boy come down and Luchasaurus, I don't know, pick him up by the throat and hold him. And you can have Jungle Boy trying to talk to him, and you could have Christian Cage talking to him from behind. And you put Luchasaurus in this internal conflict. Do I go with the guy who I came in with, or do I go with the guy who's getting me to where I want to be? And you have them basically pulling at him. And you can build a story off of that. And you have to get Jungle Boy to get by Luchasaurus to get to Christian Cage. Like, that should be how this story is working. Because Luchasaurus, whether you realize it or not, is incredibly integral to this story between Jungle Boy and Christian Cage. And to me, what they did was they totally mitigated Luchasaurus's presence in this story to have him just step aside, let Jungle Boy run up the stairs at Christian Cage. You needed to build this up a little bit more. You needed to keep Luchasaurus engaged in this story and have him be the linchpin between the two. Almost as though it's not just Jungle Boy fighting to get to Christian Cage. Jungle Boy is also fighting to regain his friendship with the guy who he started in this company with. Instead, that's not what we got. And to me, it felt like overbooking was just, they just kind of overthought themselves. They're like, oh, you just step aside and it'll kind of go. We have no idea what Luchasaurus' status is right now. We don't know if he's with Christian Cage. We don't know if he's with Jungle Boy. We're not really sure. The fans seem to sure as hell think that he was with Jungle Boy. I'm not so sold on that. I feel like this, you have a really good story. And I think we both agree. Jungle Boy is a star in the making. He is a guy who's going to be a top flight talent for AEW. And what you just did was you cut short a story that is so important and has been building for a little bit now, actually for quite a long while with Christian Cage. You basically chopped one of the legs out from underneath it by almost rushing this, and you didn't have to do it. What were your thoughts and what were your take on the Jungle Boy Christian Cage storyline that we kind of seen this week on AEW Dynamite?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was something that maybe you and I think that could have been much bigger, more impact. And it kind of just had a feel of something that fell really flat. And look, Luchasaurus is a monster. I mean, I don't even know why they just didn't have Luchasaurus destroy Jungle Boy. I mean, yeah. You want to look at it and you want to further elevate Jungle Boy when the time comes and they get in the ring. I mean, it's perfect. Jungle Boy came out with a cane, if I'm not mistaken. He came out with a walking assistant. So you come out and he's out there and he's looking all sully. And you could maybe even tease the fact that he's apologetic. And then just that quick second, boom, you do it again. And you destroy Jungle Boy. And you say, you have Christian Cage come out with another heated promo. And you say, look, man, your career is going to end up like your father's acting career. Nothing. Dead on arrival. And you just elevate that further. Sometimes it doesn't always have to be where when the person comes back, they get over. Sometimes they have that struggle and you further place doubt in terms of, oh shit, Jungle Boy has this uphill climb that he's got to make, and it might be really tough. Look at this scrawny dude. Every time he's coming out here, he's getting his ass kicked. And then when he wins, it actually feels more special because of all the hurdles that he had to climb. You're absolutely right. It wasn't as special as it should be, and that's a shame.
Yeah, it was really, really frustrating. I don't think anything was more frustrating, though, than the main event that we ended up getting. And again, you want to talk about overbooking, totally taking away from a match. I sent you a text message because I ended up having to watch AEW Dynamite on replay. I had to save it to my DVR and I had to go back and watch it a little bit later on because I had a hockey game late Wednesday night. So I couldn't watch it and take it in real time. So when I watched this, when I got done watching this, I sent you and Kenny a message. I'm going to read you verbatim what I sent. I said, bros, finishing up the Kingston versus Jericho match. I said, so much dumb shit in this match that takes away from it. Ruby punching with her broken hand, in quotations, broken hand. All right? Like, if you've got a broken hand, I'm sorry, you're not punching with that. Sammy and Ty not getting into the shark cage. If Sammy and Ty were there, why were they not in the shark cage already? That made absolutely no sense. You could have did a whole angle with Anna Jay coming down, beating up Ruby Soho, and joining Ty Conti in saving everybody from the shark cage. Instead, that's not what they did. Ty not being able to open the cage, and the guys slipping through the bars on the cage, and them showing it. Like, the whole point of that cage being there is so these guys can't get out, so these guys can't interfere in this match. Instead, these guys can just slip right on through the cage. And then you have whatever, and I said to you, I said, whatever the fuck the Jericho and Sammy hug was at the very, very end. You had Eddie Kingston up, and Sammy's holding him from behind. He ends up slipping out, goes to do this weird back fist on Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho and Sammy end up hugging and throwing punches at each other, which made absolutely zero sense. In this whole story, right? When you have a barbed wire match, you build to the first time the barbed wire is touched. You build to that first time where somebody's going to get laid into that barbed wire because it's supposed to be a big deal. The whole point of a barbed wire match is to not get caught up in the barbed wire. At no point did they ever build to going into the barbed wire. I can look past that, but you probably should have built to that. I think we both agree Eddie probably should have won this match. Otherwise, what has this story been about? What was the purpose of this? And this I think was incredibly frustrating. It seemed like it was a very, very rushed match. They only had like 15 minutes to do their match. This match should have been given at least 20 to 30 minutes, and we didn't get that. We never got that. And I think that was so unfortunate for this match. How upset were you with this match? Because this was supposed to be the blow-off. This was supposed to be the match to let Eddie Kingston move on, go do whatever he's going to do. This was supposed to be the match to let Chris Jericho go on and do whatever he was going to do. And instead, we didn't get that. This is something else I wanted to add in, too. I usually hate barbed wire matches because they don't use real barbed wire. I was telling Alyssa, I was saying, this match is going to be stupid as shit, and I'm not looking forward to it. She was like, why? I was like, because they don't use real barbed wire. They use this fake stuff that nobody gets cut up and they have to blade themselves to bleed. No, in this match they use real barbed wire, and I was impressed by that because I haven't seen a real barbed wire match since watching some Terry Funk, some Cactus Jack, some ECW or some ECW or some ICP wrestling match tapes that I have. I've got tapes laying around the house that I used to watch with that shit on it. I haven't seen real barbed wire used in a match. They did use some real barbed wire in this match. Chris Jericho ends up with a broken nose. I thought they booked this shit to oblivion, and I think it sucked. What was your take on it?
Yeah, absolutely. And bottom line, the wrong person won. How are you going to have a violent match? And what's the purpose of elevating the Painmaker? He doesn't show up that often. That character is obviously an incarnation of the aggressive side of Chris Jericho. But really, bottom line, Eddie Kingston should have won. And for me, I love barbed wire matches in concept, like you said. But what I would say needs to happen to really bring home the fact that it's violent. I know it's hard on television. Maybe that's why it should be safe for pay-per-view. Is you have to remove the ropes. The match should be a staple of a barbed wire match. There should be no ropes. There should be no ropes.
The rope should be barbed wire.
The rope should be barbed wire. And I thought it took away from it. And that's what I love to see. Yeah, absolutely. Everything you said, you nailed it. The wrong person won. And you ask yourself, what was the purpose of Chris Jericho winning? He's already the biggest star, making a lot of money. There would have been no loss in anything of the Wizard character or anything. It's the Painmaker. Eddie Kingston needed to come away looking like an OG, and instead they look like a freak show, like getting all discombobulated. Like at that point, were they all tired and exhausted, and they're just kind of willy-dilly that punch, unfortunately, was probably the botch of the year because Eddie Kingston goes to backfist the air. And it was an embarrassing botch, and it ruined the match. It just, I wasn't a fan of it. I thought just based on the potential that it could have had, it was a mistake, and it didn't live up to the expectations. AEW typically doesn't do that. Something that you get excited for a week typically lives up to the billing, and this did not. Wrong booking, overbooking, and you damn near almost killed somebody by the cage coming down. Like, what the hell? There was a fan under there. Like, who the hell in 2022 lowers a cage into the fans? And it's great. I get it. Ty Conti's getting an elevated role with her best friend back. But in the end, it's going to go down as a disappointment, and the online reaction shit all over it, which they probably should have, because it could have been so much better based on what AEW can give you. So it's interesting. How are you supposed to elevate Eddie Kingston as a badass motherfucker who keeps losing feuds to old ass wrestlers? The violent of most violent matches should produce the outcome of Eddie Kingston standing on top. But I get it. I can see why, because obviously it's revenge. You know, it's revenge. The story is revenge. Chris Jericho gets revenge. He avenges Eddie Kingston tossing his boy off the cage, and this is how you elevate Chris Jericho. And so I understand the reasoning why you put that out there, but I think someone should have said, no, man, you got to elevate Eddie. And then now what happens is the next step would be Eddie gets an opportunity against Wardlow, and he's right there on the verge of winning, and then Chris Jericho comes in and costs him. That way you can revisit this feud where Chris Jericho is the kind of the figure that's keeping Eddie Kingston from winning big moments, and then Eddie Kingston can finally move forward with a decisive victory at a big pay-per-view. Maybe they'll do that in a cage. Maybe they'll do something even crazier, but to have
maybe
Eddie
they set
Kingston
up for
lose,
All Out. I'm not.
Yeah,
but
he has to get over.
This is what this whole thing was built upon. This whole thing was built upon respect. Yeah. Eddie Kingston felt disrespected by Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho was supposed to shake his hand at the end of a match that Eddie Kingston won. Chris Jericho refused to. And that sent Eddie Kingston into this maddening spell where he was going to do whatever it took to get respect from Chris Jericho. And look, I think somewhere along the lines, AEW got really confused by what they were trying to accomplish here, because all of a sudden it became about Eddie Kingston making Chris Jericho bleed. So at the very, very end, you have Eddie Kingston throw Chris Jericho into this bed of barbed wire, and then he has to get stretchered out. That was not what this story was about. And the finish of this really took away from what has been a really good feud, has really been a really great way to help elevate Eddie Kingston and Chris Jericho show the many facets of his personality and the ability to play different characters that he has created. This was absolutely a shit show. And you totally shit on a great story that has been building for months. And you really took away from what has been a really nice build by giving us a garbage packaged finish that was absolute trash in a match that was completely rushed, and you missed horrible spots, and you had horrible spots in it. This whole match, on a scale of 1 to 10 was maybe a 2. I felt like some of the stuff inside the ring that the guys did was really good. I felt like some of the things that the guys did inside the ring was absolute trash. I felt like the booking of this was absolute garbage. I feel like if you had to take a match out of Fyter Fest to make the whole show better, you probably could have took this shit out. And that's saying that there were women's matches in there. You had a Jade Cargill match, and I bash Jade Cargill all the time because I don't think she's very good in the ring. You had a Jade Cargill match that was a little bit more entertaining than this shit. And I'm pissed about it because I thought this was I was looking forward to this. I kind of wanted to see these two have this blow-off match. I wasn't looking necessarily forward to having a barbed wire match because, again, I don't necessarily like barbed wire matches because you use fake barbed wire. You used the real shit, and you still fucked it up. Pissed me off. Now I'm mad.
Yeah, let me make you feel better. AEW has been, riding a wave over a couple years, and you have the ability to rebound quickly from mistakes. And I hope that they learn from the fact that they're getting all these botches right there live on television. Still early, and they're given the benefit of the doubt because of the rabid culture and the fan base that they have. So, and remember too that they're facing a tougher period because of a lot of injuries. So it's a little bit of a delicate situation. I think AEW can rebound from one mistake, but you can't. And they typically do. They typically build up a crescendo to the pay-per-view. Let's see what happens in September when the all-out pay-per-view takes place in Chicago, hopefully with the return of a star and things like that. So we'll see how we're moving forward. I do want to just give a quick update on Impact. We haven't been talking about it in the last couple of weeks, but something great happened. And I think it's something that will set forth the pathway for something interesting in the future. Look, go check it out. It was a good show. Overall, I'll rate it a B- show. I just want to stick to the main event for this week's Impact review. It was Alex Shelley versus Chris Sabin. Really an ode to the Motor City Machine Guns, a tag team that was a tandem, one of the best in their generation. Apart, each person enjoyed their own success as part of the X division. Sabin really took his game to a level, defying the odds of a smaller wrestler becoming the Impact World Champion at one point. And it was great because the main event of Impact was the number one contenders match to face off against Josh Alexander. It was Alex Shelley taking on Chris Sabin, and it was a good match. It was a good, hard-fought television match with the new number one contender emerging to face Josh Alexander, being Alex Shelley. And it was a good technical match. It had a lot of good things going. But then we get something that has been rumored a little bit, but finally took place that made it, from a B-, from a C+ show into the Bs. Kushida made his debut in Impact, fending off Violent by Design as they attacked the competitors after the match. And I thought his arrival, after what the hell NXT did to him, making him a caricature of what he could have been with the potential that he came in his wrestling resume, Kushida is now at Impact, and that makes it really great to see what's going to happen moving forward, to see what's going to take place. The former New Japan Pro Wrestling star has a presence, and I thought it made for a great ending hour. So I would say if you just have an hour to check in on Impact, if you have to split your time, check in on the second hour. It was good. Something great is going to take place. The announcers did a great job of kind of making you rally for Alex Shelley, talking about his lack of opportunities and really kind of highlighting the history of the Motor City Machine Guns and talking about some of the things that could have taken place with these guys. So Kushida's return was fantastic, and emphatic finale of Impact Wrestling this week. So check it out. Make sure. Now, was it good enough to win Show of the Week? I don't think so. For me, it was SmackDown. I thought that the Pat McAfee situation, elevating the use of the bitch word is coming back, even though it's played out, it felt kind of forced. I thought that to kind of transition from what I thought could have been a 20-minute Stephanie McMahon talk and reverence of her dad was quick, in and out, less than 2 minutes, and you go into a great entrance from the Street Profits that hyped it up, the Usos, with A-Town Down, Austin Theory. I thought SmackDown was the show of the week for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think SmackDown was the show of the week as well. I feel like Dynamite did themselves no service with the way that they ended that show and that program. So it's going to go to SmackDown. I do want to gauge really quickly before we get to news and notes. Death Before Dishonor for ROH is this weekend. Are you interested in that at all? Are you taking any of that in? So it looks like it's going to be a pretty good card.
Pretty good card. I will peek online. I will not watch it in full. I'll watch it in parts over the weekend. It's now, for those that know the schedule, it's football season, so it's all about preparation for reading the roster for the Detroit Lions and checking into other kind of stuff in wrestling in regards to kind of just, I've been really loving for those that don't know, if you're interested in outside wrestling viewing, A&E has been doing an amazing job with these biographies and these rivalries. And I've just been deep diving into all the old episodes. I have Dish Network. So I saw the Goldberg one. It was nostalgic, kind of talking about his run, kind of a little bit of back and forth with Bret Hart when he kicked him in the head and ended his career. And then I had on demand Shawn Michaels. Last week was the rivalry between Bret and Shawn. So good. So good. So I've been diving into some of those because last year's first season was sick with the likes of Mick Foley, Stone Cold Steve Austin. They're 2 hours and on demand. They skip through the commercial. So I highly recommend it. They're in their second season now. every Sunday, I believe, is a new 2-hour special, 8 p.m., and I get it on DVR, and it's great. And I love also the Rivalry series. It's an hour look back at some of the old stuff. So that's kind of where my interest has been lately. I would say 50% has been in-ring live current stuff, but 50% for me has been looking back at some of the old shit that I used to love. And man, I love Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart. And the disappointing thing they said was, he's like, we were so immature. We were young and egomaniacs and trying to be on top of each other and getting pissed at each other for each one getting over. He's like, and it's so true. The older you get, the wiser you get. Bret Hart looked into the camera and he said, God, we were stupid. We could have had one match a year for the next decade and created magic. But both of them, after their run in WWE, after their singles run, both got hurt and their careers took a turn for the worse. So it's been good. I think it's even better than the stuff that the WWE Network is creating. So A&E, a wrestling content provider. Thank Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast for the inside scoop. It's been really, really good. Really good. Yeah, so now, are we ready? What made your list? Hit me at this week's professional wrestling news and notes. Hit me with it, cuz.
All right, this week, one more time for the Nature Boy. Ric Flair will lace up his boots for one more match. This time he will team with Andrade El Idolo in his farewell match to wrestle Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal on July 31st. This match will be for Jim Crockett Promotions, and it's titled Ric Flair's Last Match. Making this tag team match, Andrade and Lethal can do most of the heavy lifting in the ring and allow Flair to play the hits while limiting the 73-year-old's physical involvement. It's crazy. Ric Flair is 73 and still wrestling. We may have some legitimate New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW beef between two of the biggest stars of those respected companies. At a Rev Pro Live in London 63, Will Ospreay delivered Kenny Omega's signature move to Mad Kurt. The spot didn't end the match as Ospreay pulled the opponent's arm up off the mat and feigned surprised at the near fall, mocking Omega's protected one-winged angel. A gif of the sequence was recently shared online, catching the attention of Kenny Omega. The former AEW champion argued with Ospreay, who had been childish, tweeting, "I don't get it, also pretty childish. Great execution, though, thumbs up." In a response, Ospreay tweeted, quite simply, really, "If you're a cunt to me, I can be a bigger one. That's just life's rules." Ospreay and Omega have been feuding online since Omega left New Japan Pro Wrestling in January of 2019. The two former IWGP heavyweight champions teased a match for AEW New Japan's Forbidden Door that ultimately didn't happen. Omega has been out of action since November of 2021 due to multiple injuries and surgeries. Speaking of Omega, we may have an update on his return. Again, Omega's been out of action since November of 2021, dealing with several issues and recovering from multiple surgeries. Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer previously revealed that there is a major angle involving the Young Bucks currently in the works. Per Fightful Select, certain staff have been made aware of a tentative plan for Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks 6-man tag program for AEW's All Out in September. Rumor is AEW will introduce a 3-man tag title, and the match will feature Omega and the Bucks as a team, possibly challenging Adam Cole, Bobby Fish, and Kyle O'Reilly for those new titles. So it looks like we may be getting Kenny Omega back just before September's All Out. So we'll have to stay tuned and stick around for that. Speaking with former Bullet Club members, Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows, their contracts have expired with Impact. The two have no interest in signing with the company and rather have gone back to Japan to work with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Impact said that they can come in and work whenever they would like, so there is that open door for the guys to go back to Impact. Now, Sasha and Naomi walking out may have led to this championship run. When the women's tag team champs walked out of WWE a few months ago, the company was left spinning for a new face of the women's division. According to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, this is why Liv Morgan is now your champ. Meltzer wrote, part of the reason, if not the key reason, for the recent push of Morgan was the walking out of Banks and Naomi. When they left, the idea was that SmackDown needed a new top-tier woman babyface, and Morgan was the one who got the pick of the draw. It also worked out because the fan base was already ready for her. That sounds about right for a company that has total disregard for the fans and to kind of do something in a panic move. Thankfully, the WWE fans were pulling for Morgan, so this all kind of worked out in WWE's favor. Also, according to Meltzer, Sami Zayn has a legit injury. Per Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Zayn is expected to be out of action for several weeks. Sami Zayn has his arm in a sling on SmackDown's July 15th episode. The injury is legit, but it's not a major injury, and they are hopeful on him being able to wrestle in a few weeks. And AEW isn't just looking to branch out in the US and the UK. We talked about that last week, but they want another territory. Again, according to Dave Meltzer, AEW has a tentative plan for a debut that would see the show take place in Toronto. So they want to take on Canada. Believing that an AEW show in Canada could draw up to 30,000 fans, Meltzer wrote, AEW has at least started work on an idea of a Canada debut in Toronto. It's not yet known when and what arena they would run. If the debut would be a Saturday night pay-per-view in November, they may want to take a chance at Rogers Center, the former Sky Dome. I don't think they could get 50,000 people, but in the market tells me that they believe that they could get 30,000, but more likely they would play it safe and run Scotiabank Arena. There is also the issue of the American fan base traveling to Canada and whether those restrictions would change to have it be relatively simple like it would have been pre-pandemic. If they're going for a full stadium show, since much of the pay-per-view audience is a traveling audience, a pay-per-view, there would be theoretically a sellout at any arena that they may have. So a lot of good things going on with AEW, a lot of things going on in the world of wrestling, and that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes.
Man, that was an amazing hour talking about an entity and a sports entertainment thing that we really love. What a great podcast episode. Really spent the last 60 minutes looking at a reflection of WWE and where it's going, and maybe AEW needing now to kind of compete at a higher level now that they're on the map. And that's something. Getting there is one thing, but staying there and getting to another level, that's a whole other challenge. And we'll be here at Detroit Sports Podcast looking at all things in the world of professional wrestling. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Make sure if anything that we've said, if you disagree with, if it's outlandish, crazy, let us know. Hit us up at Detroit Podcast. More and more of you are hitting that like button on our wrestling content, so I know you're seeing it. Hit us up with a comment. Let us know. At TV Chips, Kenny has the tweet of the week, and we'll get out of here on this. Saturday morning, I don't know if he's doing the directing thing the way he's supposed to be, but he gets in as a result of the retirement of Vince McMahon, and he gets in with a blast. You have to do it. So when Kenny gets in with something, you have to report it. From Kenneth Frenzel, thoughts and prayers for Vince at this difficult time. He's going to have to switch from Indeed to Tinder while trolling for chicks. And with that, this episode of the Detroit Sports Podcast has come to a close. Peace!